We see increased normalization of civilian harm, and many people are just getting used to civilian casualties and news about children of families being affected by explosive incidents, and this produces basically no reaction. So this is a very much disturbing trend. That's why we really want the UK public to ask for accountability from the UK government and from other states that are committing serious violations against children. My name is Narmina Strishenets. I'm a senior conflict and humanitarian policy and advocacy advisor at Save the Children. In the last few months, I've been working on the new report, Children and Blast Injuries, that exposes the devastating impact of explosive weapons on children from 2020 to 2025. And these kinds of reports support evidence and help build the argument for stronger prevention, protection, and care for children. The first report was launched in 2019, and it was developed in partnership with Imperial College London that helped to produce evidence for the first time ever how exactly children are affected by conflict, what kind of trauma they experience, and what are the essential gaps in research and assistance that we see and that need to be addressed. Also, that report for the first time suggested how exactly states can protect children and communities from the impacts of explosive weapons. This new report suggests a new evidence and updated context and how exactly the situation developed since 2019. It surprises me the scale of the injury is absolutely massive, and we see that 20,000 of children died in Gaza since 2023. We see that over 3,000 children died or were severely injured in Ukraine. The number of children being killed or injured is absolutely appalling. And the reaction of international community, normalization of civilian harm, has become a new normal. We see that a lot of military doctrines justify civilian casualties as collateral damage or necessity, and accept mass casualties as a legitimate tactic. The children are among the first and the worst affected by modern conflict. The conflicts become more urbanized, more devastating, and less accountable. We definitely see distinct patterns that started affecting the children in modern warfare. The first one is the emergence of new weapon technologies that targets and creates more risks for children. The second one is the severity of injuries for children, because children are more affected to blast injuries. They experience more severe trauma physiologically and mentally, and they need more resources and time to recover. Then we also see the erosion of norms and normalization of civilian harm in military doctrine. And finally, we also see the increased cost of recovery and rebuilding of societies after the war. Last year, the United Nations recorded over 12,000 children killed and injured in conflicts, and we understand that this is most likely an underestimate. When we build the trend from 2020 to 2025, we see that nearly 50,000 children were killed and injured, and this is the equivalent of 200 passenger planes, which is massive. We also see that the governments, the state actors, are responsible for most of the cases of children being killed and injured. And we see also the rise of state-manufactured weapons, which means that these are not non-state actors, but exactly governments responsible for these casualties. Blast injury is injury caused by explosive weapon and the overpressure created by them. And the data shows that 9 out of 10 casualties in populated areas, in cities and towns, are civilians. And a lot of them are children. We have evidence that children are more likely to die from blast and experience severe injuries in their head and torso. The burns are a lot more severe in children because of their body. They are smaller, they have less blood to lose, and we also see that smaller children, younger children, are a lot more vulnerable than older children or adults. The recovery is more complicated for children because they grow and they need the refitting or update of their prosthetics every 6 to 12 months. And in their lifetime, the change of prosthetics or treatment and rehabilitation is a lot more costly than for an adult. We see different patterns for boys and girls in conflict settings and how they are affected by explosive weapons. Boys are more affected in general terms. 70% of boys are more likely to be affected by unexploded ordnance, by landmines, by other types of explosive weapons, versus 30% of girls, just because of some of the specific gender patterns. Boys are more likely to be outside in the communities, scrapping metal, going to the playground or being outside, and they can be sometimes targeted as a potential combatant if they're older boys. Girls are more affected by targeted strikes on schools, and they can be also affected by mass casualty events when buses and ambulances and apartment complexes are hit by explosive weapons. We have collected a lot of case studies and stories and testimonies of children affected in conflict. One of them, the most heartbreaking, was from the little girl, Manal, from Yemen. She was just 18 months old when she was playing with her siblings outside her home, and she picked up unexploded landmine, and there was an explosion, and she lost her arm. Her family was devastating because in the first place they thought that she's gonna die, but she survived. She's a very nice and smiley little girl, and she plays with her friends again. She is receiving some assistance from Save the Children, and the team on the ground helped her to connect to health services and now to recover. Which is more dramatic, I think, is that after this incident happened, the area was surveyed for more unexploded ordnance, and it turned out that 2 more unexploded devices were found. So it means that more children could have been injured. In many conflicts in the world, the landmine contamination, it just poses a consistent threat to children. We also see the children being victim of active hostilities. In some of the crisis situations, families are struggling to get support for their children, to provide support through their lifetime, and it just draws all their family, all their community into poverty to survive this kind of trauma they have experienced. Save the Children is very proud of the partnership with Imperial College London and a proud partner of many NGOs and many coalitions working to protect civilians in conflict. We do a lot of policy and advocacy and research to bring evidence to states and media and communities and all the decision makers on how exactly children are affected by conflict. We're also doing a lot of work in the field, providing support to affected children through our health and mental health and psychosocial support. A lot of children are experiencing anxiety and withdrawal, and they just miss out on education, and we just help to fix that. And some of the children are really in need of this support and being provided new friendship and environment where even in conflict setting they really need the feeling of safety and friendship and security, and this is something that we can provide to children. For children who survived blast injury, they might need prosthetic, burn and pain treatment, and in low-cost settings, it is quite complicated to achieve this and to support these families with a proper assistance. And in some contexts, like in Gaza, there is a lack of wheelchairs and prosthetics and medication, and some of the assistance is provided in non-sterile conditions, and children experience severe pain. They are released from healthcare facilities without proper assistance, supervision, and means for rehabilitation. And this is also under-researched and underfunded field. And this is what Imperial College London, in partnership with Save the Children, is doing to bring more research, more innovation into the prosthetics, rehabilitation, treatment, into research of blast injury and how exactly children are affected by the explosive incident and how they can recover and live their life, play, learn, and be children again. A lot of prosthetic design is not very much appealing, it's not convenient for children, and their voices are just not heard. And in a new research and new findings, children could talk to researchers and share their feedback, how exactly it feels to wear prosthetic, how exactly they can use it, if it's good for play or learning or even play in certain contexts. And it just helps them to use it and to enjoy their life. First of all, we recommend to the states to uphold international norms. In the recent times, we see this erosion of norms and we see the disregard to all these rules. And that's why this is something that we recommend for states to introduce into the military doctrine, to stop using explosive weapons in populated areas, and to collect data and evidence on how exactly their military conduct affects civilians. We also recommend to invest funds in rehabilitation research and recovery of communities and children, to create more innovative solutions, to collect more research and data, to create more partnerships for better future for children in conflict. Governments should stop using explosive weapons in populated areas. This is one and only and the most cost-efficient way they can help families. They need to uphold international norms, and they should train militaries and their armed forces to protect civilians in conflict. We see that a lot of civilians are now deliberately targeted by some of the weapons and some of the military actors, and accountability mechanisms should be properly funded. They also should fund the research and fund partnerships with NGOs, with academic institutions to provide more solutions to children and families affected by conflict. In 2022, 88 states signed the political declaration to protect civilians from explosive weapons in populated areas, and the UK government was among them, which is very much commendable. But at this point, we don't see actual steps to implement it and champion it. So that's something that we would really want the UK government to do, to work more with the militaries and work with partners and allies and other states to make the WIPA declaration a reality, and from political action go into the more practical field and make it a reality for the armed forces. We see the military budgets increasing every year, and last year 2.7 trillion of US dollars was committed to military spending, which is unprecedented, and it keeps growing. But at the same time, we see that victim assistance and risk education and mine action and all kind of humanitarian support to the conflict-affected communities is decreasing or is underfunded. For example, last year from $1 billion for mine action, only 6% was spent on victim assistance and only 1% for risk education. It means that prevention and assistance is just underfunded and underappreciated by the governments, which should not be the case. Also, we see the very disturbing trend of countries withdrawing from landmine conventions, from Ottawa Treaty or from Convention on Cluster Munitions. Last year, 6 countries committed to withdraw, which is very disturbing trend. And the UK government should definitely champion them, both the Ottawa Treaty and the Convention on Cluster Munitions, to prevent states from withdrawing and to commit to this in the future. We see increased normalization of civilian harm, and many people are just getting used to civilian casualties and news about children and families being affected by explosive incidents, and this produces basically no reaction. So this is a very much disturbing trend. That's why we really want the UK public to care, to look for these pieces of news, to support such organizations as Save the Children, to provide assistance in conflict settings. We also want the UK public to seek justice for children who have been affected by explosive violence and ask for accountability from the UK government and from other states that are committing serious violations against children. We encourage everyone to read the full report with all the findings, with in-depth analysis of 11 country contexts from Afghanistan to Syria and Yemen, where you will find out more facts about how exactly children are affected by explosive weapons in these contexts. And you can find it on the Save the Children UK website.